Welcome to the Speak and Flow podcast, where we dive into strategies, techniques to change the way this world communicates for the better. I have an amazing leader I can't wait for you to meet today. Her name is Michelle Jiang Kim. She's a Rev Ops leader, as well as the Director of Sales, Strategy, and Operations at Zendesk. She also started her very own podcast, Breaking the Tech Ceiling. I'm excited for you to meet her. So I dive right in and ask her, how does she get herself into the tech world anyways? Here we go.
When I was in college,
Mm-hmm.
I was like many people trying to figure out like what is it that I want to do? What's my passion? And it was 2008, so part of there was an economic downturn at that point, and I had a dichotomy, right? Two roads, diversion of the wood, I think, as Robert Frost would say. And I went to DC to see if I could get a job on Capitol Hill, but then I also had uh, alum in my Korean traditional drumming group whose sister was looking for sales reps. So it was either it's two hands, a bird in the hand, or two in the bush, right? So at that point, just with my kind of my upbringing and my personality more at that time, I would say I decided to go with a bird in the hand versus two in the bush,
Uh-huh.
and got an introduction to a director of sales at a tech company named Irene Chang. I love her. She's my mentor. She's been my sponsor. I just can't say enough good things about her, and everyone feels the same about her. And so I interviewed with her, and I definitely was bad at negotiating at the time and speaking up for myself.
Mhm.
But she did me a solid and was like, Michelle, no, that's not how much you need to get paid more than that. So I don't think she'll get in trouble 15 years later from now, but like she really has shepherded me through the early part of my career. She's been
Mhm.
someone that I go to time and again for career advice, and for help whenever I have a situation at work or in my career that I need some mentorship on. But really, I've learned over the years that I can't just rely on this, go back to the same well over and over again. So I try to give her a reprieve and try to connect with her whenever I can. But that's how I got into tech.
Mhm.
And just for everyone to know a little bit about me, it wasn't just sales. So I started my career in SaaS, software hardware sales.
Okay.
And then I went into marketing, and I did program management,
Mhm.
and then I did CS, or customer success operations. And then I've been at Zendesk now for over 4 years doing sales strategy and operations. But I will say that it's been a very common theme through my life and my career to have, and this is very rare, like not a lot of women executives that I talk to have had mentors and sponsors in their career that look like them.
Mhm.
And in the regard of, I've had several Asian American women
Mhm.
leaders in my career. I've been very, very grateful for that. And
Yeah.
it actually stems into, or I guess ties into, kind of the theme of my life. I grew up in the Bay Area with 10 aunts, blood relative aunts. My mom is one of 10 kids. She has 8 sisters, and my dad had 2 sisters. And, we were I'm very lucky to have grown up in a very family oriented environment. We would get together for barbecues and dinners at my house.
Mhm.
And, another avenue, you just never know with your family. It never really clicked for me, but I
Mhm.
actually have an aunt who was an SVP at Samsung for many years.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so, like, I never really talked to her about career pathing when I was younger. So I really encourage listeners to think about who's in your environment, who's in your
Yeah.
network, because you just never know. Like the people who are if you're a parent, your soccer camp, other moms, other dads, like making those connections and finding out like kind people, and
Right.
finding those people who, contribute to the world in a positive way. I think it's really part of what excites me in life.
Right. I mean, it just sounds like you were able to capitalize, know who the people in your circle are, your community, and it's true. I think that sometimes people underestimate how many people they do really know. I mean, they don't, I think they don't, I mean, just to do that exercise, to sit down, who can I reach out to, or who's in my circle, who's my, maybe they think about the immediate circle, or, and then, but there's probably a ton of people outside the broader circle. And people nowadays, I feel like, are willing to help, are willing to, especially if you are someone that is just genuine, wanting to help people. Just to be surrounded by these type of people and to know who to call to. I think people are just willing to do that to help
Yeah.
you out. And
Yeah.
so
I
it sounds
mean,
like you're able
it's,
to use your relationships to get in the door for work, and also learn and have a mentor, which is rare.
yeah. And I mean, it was really kind of an accident. I mean, I don't think I was
Yeah,
very intentional about it when I
yeah.
was starting out in my career, but,
Hmm.
they say, I think I had a UC Berkeley professor say, like, you're 6 degrees, or maybe it's like six
Yeah,
degrees away from Kevin Bacon thing,
yeah.
so
Right.
like you just never know
Just
who's
never know.
connected to who,
And never know,
the
especially with social
sister
media.
of, the cousin of,
Yeah,
the, doctor of,
yeah,
so you
yeah.
just
You go
never
on
know.
social media and just say, hi, how are you doing? And you just connect. What are your degrees of connection? And so tell
Exactly.
me, and so what, it sounds like you have fascinating tech career journey in the tech industry. You went through a lot of different roles, and you climbed the ladder in the tech industry. So what is one of the hardest things in that industry as a minority woman leader?
There's two things I'm going to call out that have been a challenge for me personally.
Mm.
So I think in general, one of the hardest things about being confident in the workplace for myself is self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the different types of imposter syndrome that exist.
Oh no,
And
yeah.
I actually even don't even like the expression of imposter syndrome, because
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's not a syndrome. It's
It's
something
a-
that many people feel as a
right.
result of what pressures we that are expectations of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a lot of quote unquote imposter syndrome around, like, not knowing enough, not being an expert.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot. I mean, there's a reason I've changed roles. I've been promoted at
Mm-hmm.
Zendesk. I've been here over 4 years. I got promoted twice within the first few years. And so, it's not for nothing. But I would say that as a female, as a Asian American, um, in tech, it's really hard when I have that self-doubt, and I'm doing everything I can to build my confidence, to build my competency so I can feel more competent,
Mm-hmm.
because and confident, because that's
Mm-hmm.
where my where my challenges are. But I think two challenges specifically. One is, and this is just the case, it's not me calling out good or bad, but the majority of leaders that I work with are white men.
Mm-hmm.
And I already doubt myself enough, but when
Mm-hmm.
there are white men in the room who start to doubt me in a public forum, that's really hard. I take it kind of personally, and I work with an executive coach. I've got mentors, but that's something that's been really hard for me
Mm-hmm.
to overcome. And I try my best to just shake it off, right? Dust off your shoulder, get up, and don't take things personally. But when people question your expertise, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
constantly reinforce and reiterate that you are the expert, that you have a lot of the domain knowledge, that you have information that they don't,
Mm-hmm.
that is exhausting.
Good.
Um, and then I say the second thing that's really hard is just constantly being interrupted and talked over.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people realize, at least in my personal experience, and I can only speak to my experience, right? I grew up in a culture where you're not supposed to speak over people, you're not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to speak back to your elders. And it's taken 15 plus years of experience in the corporate space to realize, you know what? Unfortunately, sometimes I do have to talk over
Mm-hmm.
people, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise I won't get heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've been told, like, I was really surprised, because I'm someone who's quite vocal and I will share
Mm-hmm.
my opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've tried very intentionally to do less of that sometimes, because sometimes it's not warranted.
Mm-hmm.
But it's conflicting, right? Because when the theme is executive presence, you need to speak up and be heard. But what's the balance, right? When you
Right.
have people who are constant interrupters, people who just go on and on and on, it's really hard to get a word in. So I've really been intentional about trying to choose my words wisely, take pauses,
Right.
give people time to react, take some time before I react and before I say something. And obviously, I'm not perfect, but those are two challenges that I've faced just from like my personality and how I have shown up in my life prior to gaining more confidence, I would say. And
Mm-hmm.
just like from a cultural background, right? Like, even though I'm very much a Americanized person, I was born in the United States. My parents immigrated here, they met and they had me. I was born in the Bay Area. But I'm going to reference Jane Hyun's book, Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling, where she talks about, um, you know, cultural assimilation, which I am very much an American,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes generations to get past the values assimilation.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll always be hard for me to, not hard necessarily, but it always will feel a little weird to me to
Mm-hmm.
kind of like speak over people, or like, just because I'm not getting a chance to be heard.
Right.
So I think that all plays into executive presence and communicating with executive presence, because there's a degree of forcefulness that has been traditionally been marked or identified or attributed to executive presence that I think, really thankfully, as I'm seeing more, millennials, more Gen Z, more people, younger people enter the workforce, that's no longer really acceptable. So I'm actually very excited for that time when I won't have to force myself into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing that. That really means a lot. I mean, I think that it's very inspiring because when I met you, but we were at the Ascend conference, we hit it off, had a great conversation. It was a great conference, and I was one of the speakers. And then Michelle and I met. Got a chance to talk, and you just exude so much confidence. You're a leader in your industry, and then so to hear this backstory, it's so inspirational because we all have this. So it helps us not feel alone because we have all been there where we're trying so hard. We're doing everything that we can, to be the expert in the industry, and then to be put on the spot, to be able to where people are addressing, we're asking you questions to make you seem like you don't know things. It can be very tough, and to not be spoken over. And so thank you so much to share that so that everybody can all have a connection that way. And can you share what like any tips, any advice? What are some of the techniques that you learned along the way?
So I would really figure out, what is it that's stopping you from being confident?
Mm-hmm.
And
For
like I said, is it because you just don't know enough? And that could be valid, right? Like, there
yeah.
are times when you just don't know enough and you
Yes.
need to study up. You need
Yes.
to learn. You need to
Right.
research. You need to interview people. So for me, I've always, like, this is stereotypical, I've always been an excellent student. I
Mm-hmm.
learn really well in classroom settings. I'm an auditory learner.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and obviously, like, application is important too, but I've been very blessed to have a learning style that allows me to learn not necessarily by doing.
Mm-hmm.
So finding out your own learning style and figuring out, like, is it because I don't know enough? Is it
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not comfortable with the material? So whatever it is that you're not feeling confident in,
Mm-hmm.
pinpoint, why is it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
question yourself, stop
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And I'm really proud of myself, because I would say that for most of my life, I had a lot of negative self-talk, and it was
Mm-hmm.
really unwarranted. Like I said, I was like top of my class. I went to
Yeah.
UC Berkeley, very successful, outwardly successful person, had multiple jobs at like companies like Seagate, LinkedIn, but I just never had that confidence in myself
Right.
until I sat back and I asked, like, what the heck, why?
Right. So this is a clear discernment, right? Is it that you don't know enough? Because sometimes it is the lack of knowledge, But then there's other times where you're studying and studying, and then you just have to stop. Like there's just so much more that you can continue to study. And then they're knowing and having that discernment of, I know enough for today. And then deciding whether, okay, even now that I know enough, is it still that I have the lack of confidence?
Yeah, and I
The
think that
mindset.
what I really learned is
Right.
I'm very confident in my ability to learn and figure it
Mhm.
out and get stuff
Right.
done.
Right.
So
Yeah.
find out what your strengths are. Find
Right.
out what will help you shine best. What
Right.
do you enjoy? I think, there's this preconception or idea that, maybe it's society, maybe it's media. It's like
Mhm.
we all have to be so well-rounded. We have to be good
Mhm.
at everything. No, it's fine to like what you like, and it's fine to do more of what you're good at because that will help build your confidence.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I really
Mhm.
challenge myself to go out of my comfort zone and try different things like how the heck am I supposed to create a podcast? Like, this it really came out of me taking a class because my friend was starting one, and I was like, "Why?" I spent a lot of time in the fall, like working really hard at work, and I just decided I'm going to dedicate 2 hours a week for just a few weeks on how to learn this new thing.
Mhm.
And that's what started that podcast. And like I just didn't know, and you don't know things from, at least like I said, for myself. I
Right.
don't have as much confidence. But once I learned like, oh, this is all you need to do, I can
Right.
do it. And
Right.
you just try it and you put yourself
Right.
out there.
Right.
And just in the case of my podcast, um, it's really opened a lot of doors for me. And it's
Right.
really more than that. I get messages from strangers
Mhm.
saying, "Oh my gosh, thanks for doing this. This has inspired me," or like, "This was really helpful." So
Mhm.
that's really all I want to do. I am very lucky to have found a career in a space that I'm thriving in. And so
Mhm.
what can I do to give back and help others feel that same sense of achievement and success? Because
Mhm.
it's available to all of us if we can access it.
Yeah. 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 So like stretching yourself, putting yourself out there when you're doing something fresh, new, you have knowledge, you do the studying, but once you have that, then just continuing to do yourself the favor of stretching yourself, taking the risk. Yes, it's gonna be uncomfortable. Like your podcast in the beginning, it's a little uncomfortable. What am I doing? And then eventually you get there and then the confidence builds. And then you're like, oh, okay, I figured. And that's how you do it. It's not too bad.
Yeah. And
It
I
is
think
very uncomfortable in the beginning with anything that we're learning new.
anything new. And you know
Anything. You
what?
will. Mhm.
There's, I think, I just cannot remember her name, but she's actually there's a woman, I think she's maybe the founder of Girls Who Code. I
Mhm.
can't recall, but um, just I think for women, we as children specifically, at least in the United States, we're kind of conditioned, right, to just be perfect,
Yeah.
to like get good grades, to be
Yeah.
polite.
Yeah.
And sometimes boys are more encouraged to try and
These
be
things.
encouraged to try,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
I think that's part of how I was conditioned, not necessarily through any fault of my mom or my dad or anything. It's just like the way society is.
Yeah.
And so for myself, like I said, I've been successful in my academic career. I've been successful in a lot of ways, but many times I just always had this fear of failure.
Right.
And
Right.
you know what? One day I just decided like I need to just try to fail more,
Yep.
if that makes sense. Because if I'm not failing, am I really growing?
Right.
So, you got to keep at it. You got to keep trying new things. And, um, you know, it's a balance of trying to do the things that I love, that I like, that I'm good at, but
Mhm.
also pushing myself to do things that I haven't ever done before,
Mhm.
or learning about things that I don't know about.
Mhm.
And just approaching things with curiosity rather than worry or fear is something I
Mhm.
continue to challenge
Mm.
myself to do every day.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. It's very inspirational and a good reminder, a good reason to step out and look at not be so afraid of failure. I want to revisit back the conversation you're just mentioning when people talk over you, or there had been meetings
Mm.
where people would talk over you. Any tips on what do you do in that situation?
I'm gonna cite a person that I learned a lot from in terms of
Mhm.
executive communication.
Mhm.
I used to work with Jamie Buss, who was the SVP of sales, North America sales at Zendesk when I started, and she's since moved on. She's a CRO now, which is amazing. But I learned from Jamie that pre-socialization is really key.
Mm.
So if you, and as in addition, I was a program manager. So, running meetings and figuring out like power dynamics in the meeting is very important and you need to be aware of those things. But if you can set yourself up for success in a meeting, so that you've already pre-socialized with the potential naysayers. There are certain people, them, who are going to speak up or disagree or have grumblings. So figuring out how can you neutralize that, almost not threat, but like situation in advance,
Yeah.
can be helpful. If you can find your allies, like certain people agree with you, your manager is going to be on the call with you. How can
Mhm.
you work together to reinforce the message?
Mhm.
um, Figuring that out, I think that's a really good practice to try and do. I know we're all so busy that it seems like, how do I find the time to meet with this individual person before the group meeting?
Mhm.
But when you're in a group meeting, airtime is very valuable.
Mhm.
And if you haven't sorted out in advance, like, what is the purpose of the meeting? What is our goal? What is the expectation of the people in the meeting? Are they there to
Mhm.
contribute ideas? Are we there to make a decision? Are we there to be informed? I think
Mhm.
making a very clear purpose for the meeting, if it's yours, is really important.
Mhm.
So those are just some tips. I would say if you are the meeting attendee and it's not your meeting,
Mhm.
um, I think it's hard. It's the best you can do is really, like, if I employed this a few times, even just today.
Mhm.
If so many people are in the meeting and no one's giving you a chance to talk, I put it in as the Zoom chat.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hopefully, usually
Yeah.
there will be someone who's like keeping an eye on it, and hopefully the most senior person in the room or the meeting owner or someone will look at that and acknowledge that. And so
Mhm.
that's like one way to kind of make your voice heard. And I think as a leader, as leaders,
Yes.
we need to set that example
Yes.
too, because if I'm going on and on and on as a leader, the most senior person on the call, and I don't check the chat or I don't notice people's like facial expressions and I just go on and on, like, you're just what's the whole point? That's not executive communication. You're
Right.
just like doing a monologue.
Yes.
So I don't know, that's like one tactical helpful tip. um I think just getting mentorship. I mean, it's all just experience. Like, I'm a really huge proponent of mentorship. I'm part of a
Mm.
free community called Women in Revenue,
Mhm.
and they have a mentorship program that's free. But just talking to people who are good at that, like not being talked over, is another tactic.
Mhm.
Getting some mentorship, like if you notice, like you're in a room, a
Mhm.
Zoom room with 10 people,
Mhm.
and someone gets talked over and you notice that they handle it gracefully, um, talk to that person, ask them for, hey, can I buy you a coffee and can I chat with you about how you dealt with that situation? Because man, I would really love to be able to do that myself. I think that's another kind of tactical tip that you can employ as well,
Yeah.
finding a mentor, someone in your organization, in your company, in your team that handles those situations well.
Right. I think actually your tips are so powerful too. I mean, I think that they're a key, and anyone who's listening who's struggling with this, just staying in touch with what Michelle just said and committed to it. I think we'll go just meeting with the people, the pre-networking, the pre-socialization before any, with the naysayers, and then also finding your allies. Those are huge. And then again, if you're still not feeling heard, you can use the chat and then reach out to a mentor
Yeah, and
for
it's
further
if
support.
it's happening to you repeatedly,
Yeah.
it could also be just an indication of the culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? The culture of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm very grateful because Zendesk has a great culture, but yeah,
Yeah.
there are times, to be frank, then when that does happen.
Right.
But yeah, really being conscious of like what environment are you in
Mhm.
on a day-to-day basis, and are you okay with this?
Yes.
And, are people aware? Their self-awareness is such a big part of being a leader and executive presence. If you
Right.
can't self-diagnose, like, oh, shoot, I made that person feel really small by saying things this way, like
Right.
that's something that, is really important to be cognizant of.
Mm-hmm.
And, what does executive presence mean to me? Well, I'm still figuring out, but one thing that I want to point our listeners to is a Harvard Business Review article called The New Rules of Executive Presence,
Mm.
where they did a comparison. It was a study. I think they must have done surveys back in 2012, and they did the same kind of survey 10 years later in 2022. And back then, I think they kind of have a couple of categories: gravitas, communication, and appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And things have shifted, like, in a good
Mm-hmm.
way. 10 years ago, like, I think confidence and decisiveness are still very important parts of gravitas.
Uh-huh.
But 10 years ago, pedigree, like where you came out of school, like that was really important part of your gravitas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now I'm so excited that this is part of, how things are moving. Inclusiveness and respect for others are actually have replaced
Love it.
degree and some of these other, so that's important. I think, in addition to gravitas, your communication.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was, like I said, being forceful or like having
Uh-huh.
a joking or bantering, jokes and banter. And those have gone out of trend, and now it's more presence on Zoom. Like, how
Oh,
can you communicate well on Zoom, effectively
yeah.
on Zoom?
Yeah.
And are you listening to learn, or are you just, like I said, it's like, is it forceful, or are you there to receive and actually listen and give
Mm.
your opinion and thoughts on the matter in a way that is reflective of actual active listening?
Right.
And then, in addition to gravitas and communication, appearance. So, like,
Mm.
I just thought it was so fascinating because 10 years ago, people ranked physical attractiveness, tallness, slimness as high factors for contributing to, like, this is what executive presence looks like. And I was so happy to see, like, 10 years later, those are not on the list at all.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It's actually more authenticity. And
Oh,
surprisingly, not just your ability to show up in person, but your online presence, like your social media presence, is
right.
also another indicator of executive presence. And so I will credit finding this article through Peter On, who is a tech sales coach.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, after he shared that article, I just was like, wow, this is such a positive thing, right? To
Oh
show
my
that
gosh.
it's
Right.
evolved so much, even just in 10 years. So, that's kind of what, I'm figuring it out, but I'm really glad to see out in the world that things are moving in a direction where it's less, what is the right word for this? Less
Cold.
traditional, old school. Yeah, less
Old school,
traditional.
cold, well, yeah, knowledge. Like, yes, it's great to have the pedigree and the expertise, but I think it just with that component alone, it's not
Mhm.
sufficient.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And I love the authenticity part is in there. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. That's
And
great.
I would say it's kind of a tough spot to be a millennial because
Yeah.
you kind of still, like, the people who are my managers and VPs are still, they're older than me generally, and they might still have the older perception of executive presence, right? Executive
Mhm.
communication.
Right.
They might still have that. There are definitely a lot of great, amazing leaders I've worked with who
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
actually trending more toward, like, this new definition of executive
Mhm.
presence.
Mhm.
But it's a balance of, like, okay, how authentic can I really be with this
Mhm.
person? Like,
Mhm.
because like, I'm very authentic.
Mhm.
It's hard for me to hide who I am.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm so grateful to work with the younger generation of Gen Z Alpha, who are just like, they love it. They want to be real. They want people
Mhm.
who are real with them.
Yeah.
So it
Be
is a
real.
be real. Yeah,
Be
it's
real.
it's it's a
It's
line
an
to
act.
balance though.
Yeah. And so, I mean, reflecting back on your career, and we don't have that much more time, but I just have so many questions for you. We could probably do a part two. But just Michelle, you've been your success and you've grown, you've expanded in your role and adopted new roles. Like, what could you credit uh your expansion, your development, your growth, you climbing up the ladder to? Is confidence or executive presence a part of that?
Yeah. So I always say that competence and confidence go hand in hand. Like they really
Mhm.
do. Like for
Yeah,
me, there is no reason you should be confident if you have no credibility,
right.
right? So, and it's a question of like, well, how much is enough, Michelle?
Yes.
And yeah, you just always have to have that Shoshin, the beginner's mindset, always willing to learn and grow.
Yeah.
So I think for
And
myself
even, okay,
personally,
even as you're beginning to learn and grow, still having the confidence. That's
yeah,
the hard
to
part.
which is like I said, I've discovered I'm confident in my ability to learn,
Yes, that's
right?
good. That's
So
good. That's
figuring
good.
out like what is it you're
Yeah.
good at and how can you develop in those areas
Yes.
in like a safer, quote unquote, safer way.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But really, I will say of outside of the podcast, which I just ended my season one of Breaking the Tech Ceiling, where I interview VP and C-level women in go-to-market tech roles about
Yeah.
how to get from director, senior director to VP, from VP to C-level in revenue roles. And after talking to not just those women, but based almost probably 100 plus tech executives across many different functions, you just don't advance in your career unless you're intentional about it. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, so I do strategy and operations. So thinking about my life and my career from a strategy and operations perspective,
Mm-hmm.
what's the end goal for me? And what are the steps for me to take to get to those points? And sometimes you don't always need to have like an end goal in mind. Maybe it's fine to stay where you are. Maybe you don't need that promotion. And maybe there are other ways to enrich your life, but only you can decide what is
Mm-hmm.
right for you. So a big part of what I do and what I'm passionate about is professional development and goal setting. And I literally have I have it in front of me. I have it with me always. It's called the Purpose Planner. I have a planner that I live and die by.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really helped me, I used to have a lot of negative self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
and I've helped quiet that because I write things down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to keep things in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
We need to save our brain like processing capacity for important things. Not I have to remember to do my taxes. I need to remember like these are all things that you can I schedule. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much a proponent of planning out your life and your career. And this is not for everyone, like really not for everyone. Some people hate that. My husband and I are very opposite in that way. He doesn't like to have a plan. Like he won't even tell me when he's coming home for dinner sometimes. So it's like, as someone who's like, I want to know what meals I'm having the rest of the week. So it's, it's just, it's different for everyone. But for me, that's what's worked. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
constantly trying to figure out what can I learn. Last year, I had a goal to be a better speaker, public speaker, and I took Stanford continuing study classes at Stanford's continuing study class
Uh-huh.
with a woman named Amy Eliza Wong. She's amazing, and
Good.
that was so powerful. And like doing all these other things in addition to that, that I won't go into too much detail here, but culminating to going to your workshop, Melinda,
Mhm.
and you had us all do an exercise in small groups and like share like what was it, like a 1 minute like something you're passionate about. Do a 1 minute little chat on what you're passionate about to your small group, and
Yeah.
everyone give feedback. And I was just so proud of myself in that moment because I nailed it. I killed it without any sort of preparation. And so, that just really made me happy to be in a spot in my life, in a skill area that I concentrated on improving
Mhm. Mhm.
and seeing it pay out in that way.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so I really believe in that the power, right, of
Yeah.
intentionality, of
Yeah.
planning. Like I said, all of those executives that I've worked with, when I ask, how did you go from, was it an accident? No, it was never an accident. There's a lot of things that need to go right in order to go from a director, senior director to a VP, from a VP to C level. And, there's different things required at different levels. And it's not just going to happen to you. You can't just sit and wait around and pray that you're going to get that promotion.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. I love that. Yeah, have the intentionality. What are the things that I need to do? How can I stretch myself? How can I fail fast and learn quickly, get feedback, get a mentor,
Hmm.
and move up and not be afraid of those things. And then you'll watch yourself just when you focus on something, like you like focus on the speaking. And as soon as you focus yourself and pour, you're gonna make mistakes along the way. But then once you do that, then you can expand, and then you look back and you're saying, oh my gosh, I did it. And now you can move on to something else.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna
But
say one thing.
yeah.
I really am a proponent of mentorship, but as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, like I don't go to my mentor anymore for every single thing because it's not
Mhm.
sustainable. I
Yeah.
highly recommend people who are serious about career progression,
Yeah.
find yourself a career coach, find
Yeah.
yourself an executive coach,
Yeah.
and have that person be your, or even find a group coaching,
Yeah.
right? Worst case, go to Better Up. Or, is it Better Up? Better Up,
Better
and get
you?
no, Better
Yeah,
Up is
I'm
like
not sure.
a
Oh,
coaching
got it.
platform.
Got it.
So
Got it.
just that's the worst case scenario. You can
Better.
find coaches, but
Mhm.
if you're serious about career growth and career progression, I really recommend finding a coach that will help you hold yourself accountable. I'm gonna
Yes.
do everything
That's
for
a
you.
huge
But
thing.
like, just for me, that was another big shift in my career journey when I was sponsored for a career coaching program at Zendesk. I was very lucky for that.
Mm.
Thankful, and I'm thankful for it because dedicating it was a 30-minute call every 2 weeks. And I always prepared 10 minutes before. Like it wasn't even like, a long time. It wasn't in advance. It was just literally 10 minutes before that call. I sat down and I wrote down what is it that's going on in my career, in my role, in my life
Mhm.
that I want to talk to about with
Mhm.
this coach.
Mhm.
And that really helped accelerate things for me.
I agree.
So, it's not, I always talk about mentorship, but it's not enough. Like if you really want to invest in yourself, it'll pay off in
Yes.
dividends.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would encourage that.
I totally, yeah, because it gets it out of the head. You have somebody to bounce, somebody you trust that you can bounce ideas off of and just support you along your journey, along the obstacles and how to overcome them. And so I love that. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Michelle. I had so much fun with you. Thank you. Lots of great insight. I learned a lot. I trust that the listeners got some really good golden takeaways. And so really appreciate your time, Michelle, your leadership, your expertise in helping us grow, think about executive communication and how to break that glass ceiling, whether you're in the tech industry or whether in any industry. I think that you've got some good nuggets from Michelle today. So thank you
Yeah.
so
Thank you
much.
so much for having me, Melinda. I
Yes, it
really
was
hope
really
it's
fun.
helpful. And I really hope people become intentional about how they want to spend their time on this earth.
Yeah,
And it doesn't have to be your career.
right.
Just know that. Just figure out what it is that's right for you in this time. And
Right.
it can change. You can change your mind. But,
Yeah,
don't stress out so much is kind of like the parting advice that I would
I
give.
would think so too. What are the memories that you want to have hold for yourself? Hold to,
Yeah.
yeah, to take away. Mm-hmm. Ah, thank you so much. And thank you, dear listeners, for joining me. Until the next time I see you, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. Are you curious on how you measure up with your ability to speak in flow? Come grab my free self-assessment at https://speakinflow.com/assessment. And I'll see you on the other side.